welcome to all our attendees present here. Today we have Mr. Satrajit Sahani, who is an MBA graduate and a poet at heart, born and brought up in Delhi, NCR, India. He's currently working in Guild Capital as the talent consultant. Apart from his studies and professional career, he also takes interest in international politics, international relations and debate, and ever since he started taking interest in all this, he has been a part of a lot of Model UN conferences across the country in the capacity of executive board member. We welcome you, sir, and we are glad to have you on board today at the CH20 summit as a part of G20 presidency of India. Thank you so much for taking us down. Over to you, sir.
Manisha, very, very kind of you. Good afternoon to everybody present over here. Before we start off, just a quick little background adding on to what Manisha said. I think just the present times that we are a part of is a very interesting time. We think we are witnessing history that is being made. Both good and bad, of course. History has come with its own set of roles. But having said that, I think it's a very interesting time to be a part of something that I believe would change the paradigm of what we are to witness. Of course, the entire diaspora of work has changed, which brings me to the topic that I want to talk about. And I know it sounds a little heavy. Circular economy as a concept may not be something that is practiced in developing economies a lot. There are bits and pieces, pockets wherein corporates are trying to do something. So I'll try and take you through this, gather some insights as I think keep telling everybody around us that it's a two-way street. Really, it always is. You learn something, you give something, you get something back. Bear with me. It's a small little presentation that I will try and walk you through. It's a topic that has been of interest to the country, and I think as a part of the G20 presidency, India has really kind of taken an initiative here to showcase to the world what we really can do, what we propose to do, and this is my small little contribution in that same regard. Manisha, just confirm once you can see my screen, right? I'm just going to share this. I'll start off then, and I'm hoping that people are going to be interested in what I talk about. Like I said earlier, it's a little jargon filled, but I'll try and take you through to this as simply as possible. All right. Let's start off then. The idea has always been that a circular economy paradigm will need a lot of inertia to kind of get over from the traditional business models that we've been following in the country, at least in the corporate diaspora. But what it really means, what are the challenges, what I foresee as contributions, challenges, roadblocks, and opportunities at that end, right? To kind of talk about it a little more, here's a small little picture. I don't know how much you can see this, but the global discourse on sustainable development has really propelled the concept of circular economy right into the limelight. It's become the buzzword. The idea is that you kind of give a solution to the prevailing quandaries of resource scarcity and environmental degradation, something we are very conscious about these days, right? I want to talk on both of these aspects with respect to the Indian corporate landscape, because I think that's really the need of the hour, and what is really captured in the throes of rapid industrialization, the consumerism that comes with it, the principles, and the catalytic potential to really recalibrate the prevailing paradigms and secure a sustainable future at that, right? It's slightly in depth. This is a case study that I think would really appeal to the next new change makers and the future in general, right? I want to punctuate this by using certain tangible real world examples without taking names, right? I don't want to infringe on anybody's copyright or get sued for no reason, but that's really been the idea here, right? Okay, all of us are very familiar with the entire concept of reusing, recycling, and distribution, consumption, and how it follows in a circular manner, really. And that's really the gist of what a circular economy does. We are looking at objects, we are looking at products, we are looking at services that can be used, reused without leading to so much as wastage and waste reduction. That's really the goal end, right? Um, to kind of help this along, let's take what is the present economic scenario, right? What it really means to be in a country, in a developing nation like ours presently. It's linear in the sense that it follows a straight line wherein the resources are extracted, products are manufactured, they're consumed, and then discarded as waste, right? Now, this model has led to significant amount of environmental issues, right? And all of us know this. All of us participating here know this. We are talking of, but not limited to, resource depletion, pollution, waste accumulation, so on and so forth. Now, corporates have been primarily focusing on maximizing the production and consumption, which often leads to overexploitation of resources which are finite. And this model of value creation is going to be redundant in coming times because we are fighting for the same earth. It's the same land, it's the same amount of oil, it's the same amount of pretty much everything. These are not being created at the rate at which these are being consumed, right? So, the consumption-centric focus is a pursuit of rapid economic growth. We all know that. And that prioritizes volume-driven production and consumption, right? We are catering to almost, close to 1.4 billion people. This approach leads to a scarcity. This leads to an increase of waste generation. And it puts pressure on the ecosystems, which leads to the next thing, which is the environmental degradation. It contributes to pollution of all kinds, air, water, you name it, deforestation, loss of biodiversity. And corporates practice often disregard this ecological impact. Of course, as a corporate, I don't think I get to diss a lot here, but the entire idea has been that corporate societal responsibility, CSR, as a lot of you may know here, is really a small effort on our part to compensate, but that compensation isn't in kind, right? We are trying to circumvent issues. Imagine a landfill generated out of, let's say, a plastic factory. How are you going to probably, through your CSR activities, reclaim that land? That really is not the approach, right? Because once the land is gone to a plastic landfill, you can't reuse it by saying that let's fund some NGO to do some good work. That's really not the kind of compensation model that we're looking at. And that's really the present economic scenario, right? Which leads me to the nexus, the synthesis and the structure that is at play. Now, understand this. All of this, the entire paradigm is predicated upon the tenets of decoupling, recirculation, and regenerativity, right? Which is really the holistic framework aimed at harnessing resource optimization to its fullest capacity, right? While you're mitigating those externalities of linear economic trajectory, which I just showed, right? Now, I know this is a novel construct, really. It advocates a lot of ideas which may or may not leave you odd, but bear with me, right? This does have potential to do a lot of good to the economy that we are a part of, while facilitating the prolongation of product life cycles and integration of essentially making a co-industrial symbiosis, right? Essentially what you're trying to do is you're trying to create an opportunity somewhere, not to be used for maybe once or twice, but essentially make it into a holistic kind of a self-sustaining model, which I think the word sustainability is really overused, but that's just the part of it, right? Okay. I'm going to talk about 3 broad examples without taking any brand names. I leave that to the interpretation of anybody who's joining here. Feel free to build your own examples. The 3 particular sectors that I will talk about are my key focus areas. I also believe that these sectors have their own significance. I'll come to that in a bit. Let's start with the first really, really big example that I think has a potential to do a lot of good. Right. Now, all of us are, I don't believe anybody here will say that they are not a part of any sort of an electronic sphere. You're attending on Zoom, you're already a part of consuming a lot of electronics product, even if you are consciously aware of it or not. If you're watching this live, if you're going to watch a recording, you're going to probably go back, use a laptop, use the internet. We're talking over to each other, texting, chatting. All of this requires a lot of electronics, right? And really, that is my first case study, the electronics sector epiphany. How are we commemorating? Let's say I picked up a company X, like I said, fill in the blanks. You can use whatever company you feel like in the sector. I'm going to talk about the initiative first, what a electronics giant could do, and then my own analysis to it. And I'm going to follow the same pattern. So just bear with me. Feel free to ask questions. Feel free to drop in anything that you don't understand. I'll be happy to answer. So let's say there's a company X, right? And let's say it's really one of the largest conglomerates out there. Even if it's a small one, doesn't matter. But a large conglomerate really probably brings things to life. And this company has been spearheading the veneration of circularity through certain initiatives which are a part of a regeneration system. To kind of dumb it down, imagine a smartphone manufacturer, right? Now imagine if the smartphone manufacturer orchestrates and ushers the new consumers into a realm of post-purchase engagement, thereby enabling a seamless refurbishment and upgrade of the erstwhile what we consider an obsolete device. Any smartphone, including the one that I use, any smartphone has components which are typically, or which can typically be used time and again. These are all components which have the capacity to be recycled, reused, right? Now imagine a big giant trying to take a new age customer base by making them say that, okay, look, while we're going to give you a smartphone and you're free to purchase, this comes from used products. This comes from erstwhile products which were a part of an earlier system, earlier device. Right now, it may not seem like something that a lot of smartphones are doing. Everybody who is an Apple user here, who's a OnePlus user here, Samsung, you name it, every one of us is gunning for the next release. Every one of us is gunning for the next big phone that will break the market. But the analysis is very simple. A strategic pivot towards a circular economy will substantiate the amalgamation of ecological prudence and corporate profitability. How the two will come hand in hand? One, the entire concept of ecological prudence will come into fact that now you're not looking at using new materials, new raw materials. You're thereby cutting down on the use of resources. And how are you increasing corporate profitability? By making sure that your manufacturing costs are going less. You're using the same set of plastic, recycling it, refurbishing it into another device. So while your smartphone is essentially nothing but a technological advancement and bug fixes, which are essentially nothing but software updates, the hardware can still be essentially resuscitated from your prior devices. And that's a change that we would want to see. Why particularly electronic sector? If you look at the economy and how we've kind of traversed since the last economic setback at 2009, you'll realize that electronics is one of those fundamental key sectors wherein this expenditure has gone up due to the lack, or rather due to the availability of a lot of disposable income with the newer generation, right? Which really is the initiative one and particular. I'm getting questions. I'll take them up one by one, but let me just complete the case studies. Thank you so much for the question, though. It's a good question. I'll come to that. Which brings me to my next case study, right? Now, we are talking about a sartorial revolution. Now, okay, and again, look, you can feel free to ignore the jargon. That's completely fine. I have a leaning towards literature. I can't help it. But essentially what I'm trying to talk about is essentially a fashion conglomerate. Again, feel free to use whatever brands come to your mind. I don't mind somebody mentioning a Zara or a Gucci or a Prada here, but again, the idea is very simple. Fashion, the concept of fast fashion, the concept of fashion evolving not seasonally, but according to your whims and fancies, is something that captures our imagination a lot. And if you simply look at Manisha, you'll realize that she'll dress up really well. But the idea again is very simple. We are trying to orchestrate a transformation within the fashion lexicon by ingeniously infusing repurposed fabrics into the culture. We are trying to rekindle that ethos of sustainability and conceptualize a recycling initiative wherein the patrons are ardently encouraged to proffer pre-loved vestments for reintegration into the production, right? Again, not many of you probably know this over here, but H&M is actually someone who does a lot of this work in real world, wherein they will consciously use old garments into the. I don't know. I'm so sorry. I don't have the exact statistics and data to support my claim, but I know for a fact that they do run an initiative here. The idea is very simple. Right now, it's a use and throw fashion culture, trying to keep up with the trends, trying to keep up with the times, trying to keep up with whatever Instagram has to offer. But the idea is that you're now consciously looking at clothing or wearables which you know have been a part of an earlier garment, which you know have earlier been part of something else. Now, imagine the kind of consumer mind shift that is required here. Given a choice, I probably would not want to know that the shirt that I'm wearing was earlier probably used as a raw material for somebody else's trousers. But you need to realize the fact that cloth or garments in general derive a lot of ecological costs, and they are not the easiest of things to make. Silk, cotton, blended jute, whatever you name the fabric, and you will know that there are ecological implications to that. So the idea here is also that a fast fashion, not a fast fashion, but like a fashion conglomerate taking a conscious step towards creating an awareness towards consumers that, look, we are going to repurpose this. And the idea is very simple, right? You create a sustainable fashion bearing resonance with the circular narrative. You're exemplifying resource moderation, and you're trying to revalorize the entire diaspora of what is erstwhile a discarded material. Now, this is an audacious trajectory. However, it is ensnared in the complex duality, right, of trends and consumer psyche. And it's a conundrum. I'll give anybody who's asking me this, it's a conundrum. I will suggest a few things later on, but it's a conundrum. It's a lot to do with consumer psyche. But really, that's my case too. Again, the sectors that I've chosen are based on the disposable income patterns that the country has offered to show in the better part of the last 2 decades, probably. And which brings me to the third sector, and this should be really a no-brainer. It's the automobile sector. You look at any growing developing economy, you'll realize that developing economies are places wherein the car industry, the automobile industry in general, not just cars, is on the rise, because you need logistics to be developed. You need to make a statement. You need to probably live up to certain societal standards, whichever the reason may be. The entire idea is that the automobile sector will have a metamorphosis, and how do you orchestrate ingeniously around that? Again, feel free to use names, Tata, Mercedes, whatever comes to your head. I personally have a leaning towards Mahindra. Again, feel free to use your imagination here, but the idea is again very simple. You symphony a rejuvenation through pioneering the manufacturing of air. I don't know how many of you are aware of this, but the entire of car industry faces a severe shortage on the semiconductor front. And to those of you who know this, the semiconductor industry is concentrated into a few countries. The chips that are being used aren't exactly available in the open market, in the wholesale market, right? And therein lies my third case study, wherein what you're trying to do is you're trying to refurbish pre-owned auto components to effuse them into a second lease of life, and effectively circumventing this entire profligacy of virgin elements. You're not trying to use new products. You're trying to make use of things that already exist, refurbish them. A small little example, again, I don't have the data to back this up. I'm so sorry for that. But if you look at any developed economy, whatever developed definition means, but if you look at any developed economy, you'll realize the second-hand car market is actually something that is very developed. In a country like India, that is still coming up the curve. I can name a few companies off the top of my head: Cars24, Car Trade, Spinny, Ola, for that matter. But you'll realize that it's still, as a concept, very novel. There is a lot of inertia from the consumer side into buying a used car, right? And the term used is looked down upon in the Indian context. You want nothing used, you want everything to be brand new, right? So the analysis here over being that you are trying to epitomize the circularity within the automobile industry. You are essentially imbuing redundant components with renewed vitality, right? Now, an engine will always be an engine, but it will get rusted after a while. But that does not mean that the entire hardware is obsolete. You still have the metals, you still have a few things here and there, right? Now it's an uncharted terrain to developing nations. Not uncharted, very, very nascent in its stage probably, but you are trying to essentially tap into the consumer acceptance and saying that, look, the supply chain intricacies is something that I will take care of as corporates, but we are hereby trying to fully fledge an integration into all of this. You're using certain products, certain parts, certain elements to kind of just lean into something that already exists without trying to cut down a tree, without trying to mine a hill, or without trying to draw water out of somewhere, right? The three industries that I spoke about are, in my opinion, wherein the most amount of economic activity happens in any developing nation, especially in a country like India. Which were the three areas that I thought could have an immediate impact with not a lot of effort, to be very honest. Now, there are certain opportunities and complexities, as is the case with anything new, right? Opportunities are very, very simple. It speaks for itself. I've spoken a lot about resource optimality. I'll skip that, but economic vistas. Now, a lot of people don't probably pay attention to this, but essentially what you're trying to do is you're trying to create a pantheon of economic avenues, including refurbishment services and cascading of supply chain. Now, this is an industry on its own. Imagine an entire army of corporates or new age entrepreneurs trying to very consciously look into refurbishing of elements across sectors, and that creates avenues, that creates jobs, that creates a completely new challenge and a problem to be solved, in my opinion. By virtue of the first two, you are actually trying to restore the ecosystem. You are trying to essentially bypass the present entanglements, and you are trying to bypass the linear supply chain model that I earlier spoke about. You're not stopping at disposal. You're now trying to make it circular, which is really the theme of whatever we are talking about here, right? There are certain complexities, of course, and I think the complexities are the real make or break elements here. How do you metamorphosize the consumer psyche? Look, as a student of consumer behavior, I find it fascinating, right? Even I'll give you small little examples. Even till when I was growing up, we did not think pen drives are going to go out of fashion. We did not think CDs are going to go out of fashion. We did not think iPods would go out of fashion. We did not think digital cameras will go out of fashion. We thought a lot of things. We did not think CPUs will go out of fashion, but they did, right? For the lack of a better word, they did. And as consumers, we adopted to that change. What we failed to realize is that it was a very carefully orchestrated, architected revolution in terms of technology that was brought about by the bigger players. They were the ones who kind of took that first charge that, okay, look, this is the new future. This is how the future looks like. We are going to be a part of something new, and you got to be on board. Once that clicks, or rather once you take that initiative, then it's the corporate's responsibility, or let's say in a certain way you're trying to then look at the operational challenges. This could be all very hunky-dory, this could be all very smooth. Like I could be a $1 billion empire saying that, okay, all right, whatever I sell has to be bought by the consumer. That is great, but I will still have operational challenges. And the operational challenges won't stop at one place, right? You will have to create a restructuring. You will try to encompass, redesign the process. You'll try to create symbiotic collaborations. For example, if you're only a manufacturing unit right now, you will probably need to have a disposal unit very nearby. If you're only into logistics, you will need to realize that, okay, all right, look, this can't be just a point A to point B game. It has to be a point A, B, back and forth. And then there are regulatory conundrums. By virtue of creating something very new, something that does not exist, something that is only theoretical, largely in nature, you will need to circumvent and bring about policy changes. You will need to ensure that the present laws, present industrial norms conform to what you're trying to talk about, which really is the idea behind a forum like a G20, a Changemaker Summit, because you're trying to tell the government, you're trying to tell the policymakers, lawmakers that, look, the problems exist, we are trying to do something about it. These are the ideas that will get you somewhere. And then you need to showcase it with certain examples. So what are we really talking about? What are the prospects? What is this strategic amalgamation that I'm talking about? First, foremost, there has to be a cognitive evolution. Look, I know that as mankind, I think we stopped evolving a long time back. We kind of got stuck into something. We got into other pursuits. But all jokes apart, the consumers, which are the driving factors behind an economy, need to be educated, uplifted. Be conscious to the idea that this is everything new does not mean everything good. New does not necessarily equal good, right? To that end, you will need to have educational incursions. You will need to plant it within the consumers of tomorrow, at a very grassroots level, probably in schools, colleges, whatever educational institutions. That, look, there are implications in the longer run which will affect you badly, which will in some form or shape come back to bite you. And that is a cognitive evolution we are looking at. Both present consumers need to have a conscious change in their mindset, and the next generation needs to realize that these are problems prevailing in the society. Something needs to be done. Right. Collaborative Churaskurup. What we are trying to essentially look at is that corporates must proactively engineer collaborative partnerships, which I call the eco-industrial convergence. You're converging competencies that exist to co-create sustainable ecosystems. Nothing's isolated in a global world like ours. Trust me, you purchasing a belt maybe worth maybe $500 through UPI from some store is actually a 3-4 layered process. Every step is integrated with a different sector, economy, job prospect, right? So you need to be very, very, very carefully construct the entire collaborative partnership, and you need to look at new avenues. Probably those avenues don't exist. I don't know of a lot of companies which will actively collaborate with the waste disposal agency. I don't know a lot of companies or factories which will actively collaborate with a electronic disposal partnership. They won't probably do that, right? Because it seems like a cost, and that will bring about that policy advocacy. That will bring about the corporates to wield an instrumental role in amplifying their voice, to clamor in favor of policy changes that will not just drive the economy but bring about a more sustainable, holistic manner. Of course, again, slightly probably novel in an idea, but all of this is predicated by the fact that there is an innovation odyssey out there. You need to take a technological leap, the likes of which we have witnessed in the last 20 years. I think the kind of technological vanguardism we have witnessed is astounding. Like I mentioned, we went from using phones to touchscreens to cloud to pen drives got out of fashion. Things happened, right? And we've all been a part of that change. So why not? And all of this was done by the virtue of newer technological advancements. And then the resonance that came through it, right? We are talking about integrating digital technologies such as blockchain, deep tech, and transcend the operational complexities and furnish that kind of traceability. I don't know how many of you are aware, but supply chains in general, logistics industries generally is actually experimenting with having blockchain so that the traceability, the transparency increases. And more such initiatives wherein two seemingly different avenues can come together, create a holistic nature that not only helps them but helps us in the longer run. What are the implications for Indian corporates, right? And this may seem a little no-brainer because I think I've been going about the subject for a while, but essentially what I'm trying to muster the courage to say here is that this is all great, this is all good, but the present scenario is, in terms of resource management, it results in resource depletion. Circular economy will prioritize resource efficiency, promoting a resource management as a part of the economy. in terms of waste management, we are resulting in excessive waste generation. The circular principle will bring in minimizing that waste generation through the use of reuse, repair, recycle. In terms of innovation and competitiveness, we are hindering innovation to focus primarily on mass production and cost reduction. Those are the buzzwords. But in a circular practice, you are now driven by innovation, which necessitates the product redesign, repairability, new models to come up, new business models, which will enhance the competitiveness by creating newer avenues. The environmental impact, I won't deep dive. Very, very simple to understand how these will live. But the last and probably the most important, that the consumer behavior right now, which is driven by short-term trends, which is driven by disposability as an end game, goes into probably creating a mindset wherein you're looking at durability, you're looking at making choices which have implications to the future, you're fostering a more responsible consumption pattern, right? Which brings me to the conclusion of what I had to say, right? You're trying to confluence the economic paradigm within the ambit of Indian corporates, which will surge as an undeniable epicenter. You are trying to essentially embody elements within, let's say, the three sectors that I put: electronics, fashion, and automobile. You're catalyzing their resource optimization and essentially creating an ecological tribulation, which really does not harm anybody at that. And then you're looking at that entire thing being tied up by the ambit of circularity, adorned with opportunities, complexities. You're beckoning the new Indian corporates to traverse this pathway, crafting a future. I know all of this sounds a little too novel, right? You're trying to do something that has not been created. You're trying to do something that does not exist yet. But that's the effort, right? That's essentially the change we want to talk about. And I mean, yeah, that's pretty much it on my end. I'll be happy to kind of take up questions. And thank you so much for your time to be a patient listener. But yeah, I'm happy to take up questions if there are any. Within more than I actually had one question.
So I think we have a question already. Yes.
Is good? Yeah, sorry.
There is a question already.
Yeah. Right. Okay. I was thinking whether this question will come up or not, but fine. Yes. Right. Lean manufacturing presently does not exist. It may exist in pockets. I probably take a little cynical approach to this, but the idea of using lean manufacturing in circular economy is great. If you look at the principles that get talked about, right? You're defining, trying to measure, analyze, improving. All of this is a great integration towards circular economy. But you need to understand that using the lean practices are novel in its concept, you can't use it together. That's not going to happen. The manufacturing industry is set in its own ways. There are tried and tested out processes which are already in place. What you need to do is you need to showcase micro examples of how all of these concepts in different ways and means take up into more tangible and better results. In an economy like ours, I think it's still some time away. As an idea, I think it's great. I hope that does answer the question.
Do we have more questions? No, I guess. Yes. Thank you so much, sir, for taking out time from your busy schedule. It was really nice having you on board, and it was really an insightful session for us and for all the change makers out there from the G20 countries. This will be broadcasted later on, and your insights will be really helpful for us to frame the policy papers. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having it. Thank you so much to everybody who joined in, taking some time out. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.